Sri Yantra, Part 2. In this part, we'll review basic concepts, 6 of them, to helping us to understand Sri Yantra. Many people may not be so familiar with them. Macrocosmos, microcosmos, evolution, oneness and multiplicity, and Shakti Shakta. And very important, the accessibility of the divine through effort, yoga, and the goal of identity with God, and Sri Yantra in 3D. Many Vedic concepts and rituals did not survive in later Hinduism, and I want to briefly touch on those which will help our inquiry into the Sri Yantra. The concept of macrocosm and microcosm, for example. Macrocosmos and microcosmos. The smallest reflects the largest. It's not a duality, but they correspond to each other. First, formulations of an immense order, like a great galaxy of stars, which in some way represents and resembles small ones, our solar system, circles in rotation around a center. And even down to the elements. As above, so below is a well-known saying. Macrocosms relate to microcosms. Immense number of galaxies, over 225 billion of them counted so far. Down to the basic particles of the lithium atom, for example, protons and neutrons in the center, circumference of electrons swirling around. The Sri Yantra too represents both macro and microcosms. Secondly, both micro and macrocosms also contain or imply the other. Everything in the world exists in some way in each of us, and what we do affects everything else. The tantric idea of the universe as a cosmic man here, not a god, a cosmic being. On a more personal level, different deities or planets and zodiac signs relate to body organs or energy centers, it is believed. The chakras, correspondences they are called. It's a concept that came into Western thought as well. Stars and elements. Influences of the heavenly bodies on our lives. Astrology, in other words. Here, 5 planets, sun and moon, have an effect on our bodily functions and our personality, as with pride, stinginess, envy, self-esteem, and anger, translating it from the French. 7 chakras in all. It's more than a theory. We especially experience how the sun and the moon affect what happens here on land and sea, and with our own biorhythms. This scheme of chakras is central to all Hindu thought, not just tantric. Our energy centers corresponding to different internal organs and heavenly bodies as well. Power fields, microcosm, macrocosm. Symbols all over this symbolic man. The Anahata chakra, for example, is the heart center, with 12 petals and Sanskrit letters and 2 triangles intersecting as male and female principles. Its main energy is love and balance. Many tantric yantras actually represent both microcosm and macrocosm and are seen as a portal between the two, a portal. In the Sri Yantra at the top, the 9 stages of lotus petals and triangles are also called chakras. The Sri Yantra is even called the king of the chakras. Here, the beginner, the neophyte with bound hands, is about to start his journey of self-liberation with many yantra symbols around him. But Hindu gods or goddesses are not usually depicted in pure tantrism, abstractions only. Another illustration of this micro and macro philosophy is that often our sense of personality, that is microcosm, is projected outward to nature, to the macrocosm. We think we see images projecting into nature, faces and clouds, project aspects of ourselves that help us make sense of things which help us see importance and patterns in our lives. A man in the moon, we see human personalities and attributes in our pets. We personify the universe in a way, a very common habit. Each culture and its people have had a different sense of the divine, and their images of God became characteristic of their culture. God, a divine being, male or female, with varying attributes. Or maybe not one, but many gods or goddesses, pantheons of projected images. The Divine Mother, it is said, is the source and sustenance of all the little gods and goddesses in us. Some have even imagined little gods and goddesses in all parts of the Sri Yantra. A very unusual depiction here. Images of energies and powers that we visualize. A final example of macro and microcosm is from modern technology. Holography. It's photography made with lasers and without lenses. A wave of light that is scattered by an object is recorded on a plate as a kind of interference pattern, producing holographic images. The recorded image, called a hologram, appears three-dimensional, and any part of it can represent and reconstruct the entire image. Sort of macro as the original image and micro as any smaller section of it. But the smaller the piece of the original 3D image, the less clear the new image is. Here's a kind of holographic art. Holograms relate to the concept of the big self, little self. So the Sri Yantra is holographic in a way, but in a more spiritual way, God as great self, the person as little self. A last image that wraps up this important concept of macro and micro. From galaxies to atoms, heavenly influences on life on Earth and our energy centers, even holography and our very human way of projecting ourselves into our world. As above, so below, and as below, so above. The Sri Yantra is that. Another main concept in both Vedic and later Hinduism is that potentiality is inherent in existence, in nature. In the seed, the whole plant is implied. In an acorn is a future oak, and even the details of a leaf, like this. In creation, everything is not fully created, completely manifest. There are many things latent, some partially evolved, some beginning to be evolved. In the Big Bang theory of creation, all of the present and future cosmos was ready, implicit. All of our atoms come from the time of primordial creation, created and recycled by stars, solar furnaces. Lots of potential to come. Evolution into myriad forms of the earth. The physical me, my inner processes, are more a becoming, an evolving. I am so much more, potentially, than what I seem at any moment, what I seem right now. Even the word Shri in Sri Yantra implies potentiality, favorableness, implying great potential. Tantric practices use many abstract yantras and conceptual symbols, quite in contrast to popular Hinduism. Yantra is simply an instrument, a machine, a storehouse of power. Sri Aurobindo calls it an engine. Traditional yantras, it is said, are born from the word logos, parallel to the Christian Gospel of John, where it is written, "In the beginning was the Word." A more recent yantra was created by Swami Satchidananda, with symbols of the main religions of the world all around some aspects of the Sri Yantra. The first Tantric Hindu text was written down in the 1000s, called the Tantra of the Great Liberation. Non-Aryan people, lower-class Hindus, even tribal outcast groups could participate in tantric rituals, and of course, even women. Hindu Tantrism assumes a single existent god called Brahman, a monotheistic god, neither male nor female. That's unlike in the Western world, where God is normally seen as Father, here creating Adam. Patriarchal religions in the West. In fact, Tantrism relates in a way more to Christ's teachings, as emphasized by St. Paul. His new teachings were not just for the Jews, they were for everyone, he insisted. It was a new belief that extends or spreads, as meant by the word Tantra. So there are a couple significant concepts that I'd like to review which are inherent in Tantrism, in the Tantra, which extends or spreads. So starting from the concept of a single God, multiplicity is a kind of illusion. If we accept our complete oneness with God and the oneness of everything in God, it's an illusion. But in human experience, one implies two, and so two is implicit in the one. This is the knot that ties together the stars, says Sri Aurobindo. And the two who are one are the secret of all power. The two who are one are the might and right in things. Then three is implicit in the two, etc. Oneness and multiplicity together as a concept. Those of the West may see this as just an idea of the mind, a rationalistic thought. But it goes very deep in the Eastern mind. Within the one are the many. One and all in one, with the Sanskrit word Om here representing the one. Multiplicity is the play or varied self-expansion of the one, Sri Aurobindo wrote. As the one occupies many centers of consciousness, multiplicity is implicit or explicit in unity. So the one, or God, or Godhead, expresses itself in many ways. For example, the multiplicity of our experience is a fact of life. So in Hindu tradition, the many ways of being or ways of feeling, gods and goddesses, if you will, are seen as part and parcel of the Supreme. All living creatures are sacred, and much of Hindu thought has it clearly that way. The many become a symbol of the one, so we're back to one implying two, and one implying three and four, as in division of cells. So one implies thousands, millions, billions. Even we ourselves are made up of so many other people before us. Each of us is a new genetic psychosocial construct. Evolution is a great multiplicity, from the simplest of beginnings. We have in us something from all cultures and traditions. We reflect all others, and they are in us in a way. In tantric terms, the point circle assumes a radius. A polarization of Shakta and Shakti takes place. There is an unfoldment, and there emerge two more center points, bindus, which is the division of Shakta and Shakti, beginning the creation. The whole of creation is full of the dual poise of the static Shakta consciousness and the dynamic Shakti action, a very important concept. For the Tantrist, duality is one, meaning it's the union of paired or polar opposites that we know, like male and female. Shakti and Shakta, energy of being, and benevolent consciousness. In ancient Hinduism, common imagery depicts Shiva as a god, seated here, carved in stone, with 3 heads and 4 arms. He is Shakta in Tantrism. His lower hand position is a mudra, a hand pose, and indicates blessings. He gives his blessing to devotees. This mudra will be part of our Sri Yantra meditation later on. Another very common Shiva is Shiva Nataraj, king of the dance. 4 arms again, and very symbolic. Nataraja dances his ecstatic and symbolic cycle of destruction, creation, and preservation at the end of the world, and the beginning of the next one. Very ancient bronzes. In his hand, at the far left, he shakes a hand drum as he dances, and nearby, his open hand offers protection to control inner problems and turmoil. In the one at the right, he holds a flame of burning hot light to promote inner illumination. We will see these 4 hand mudras in our Sri Yantra reflection. The divine female, Shakti, is shown in many ways too, and with different number of arms, here also in bronze. Both of them are known by many different names in different parts of India. In a Hindu temple, a carving in stone, with a priest on the left, marries Shiva to Shakti. Most elaborate carving of Shiva as a god with his wife Shakti, or as goddess, on the side of a temple. Sometimes, to emphasize this important male-female duality, which is inherent in oneness, they are shown half male and half female. Shiva Shakti, Ardhanarishvari or Ardhanarishvara in Sanskrit, male or female, but as one. He has his bull on the left and she has a huge earring and holds a lotus. As it is said, they are one, they are all, they are God. Paired opposites as one. These very naive and anthropomorphic images are much easier for most common people to comprehend than the very abstract yantras of Tantrism. But the two-in-one is a basic tantric idea. As tantric language has it, the universe arises through the copulation of Shiva and Shakti. A gilded bronze statue called Yabyum of the Buddhist tantric tradition. A tantric text states this: the union of Shiva Shakti is the union of the one with itself, to be realized by each one within herself or himself. So here we get to a much deeper level, a unity of opposites within ourselves, very important. In this initial polarity, the male stands for quiet awareness and wisdom, and the female for action and power. The abstraction of this is the Sri Yantra. Remember, we began with a bindu, the center point, then out to the first triangle, and the entire world evolved thereafter, very symbolically. Union of maleness with femaleness, really just representing paired duality. They are the warp and the woof of the texture of existence, as much as right and left and up and down. Together they are represented by the Sri Yantra as paired male and female, somewhat like the Chinese yin and yang. They are not separate from each other. For the Tantric, practice and meditation rank far above any devotional pictures or reading scriptures or other theoretical knowledge. It's really personal experience that counts, not Vedic rituals and priestly blessings. Not the ascetic rejection and renunciation of the senses and body, but the acceptance of this world, recognition of our bodily needs, and of our psychological and sensuous natures. Tantric practice works with that, with us as we are, towards the goal of identity with God. So Shakta, or Shiva, must not be worshipped or honored as an anthropomorphic deity of popular Hinduism, but more abstractly as a way of being. Way of being. Unique stones like this have been made for thousands of years as lingams, generative, upright maleness. At best, he, Shiva, should be seen as an abstraction, a potent vertical upright symbol, a phallus called a lingam. A stone carving of musicians here worshipping the abstract male symbol. Deep in a temple sanctuary, this dark stone lingam is decorated with flowers and worshipped. Shakti, the female, is stylized as a circle, termed a yoni. Many versions are used, even the lotus petals, upper right. Notice the one in the top center, exactly the innermost part of the Sri Yantra. So in Hinduism, these symbols are usually combined. In a temple, a stone male Shiva lingam is set within a female stone circle, the yoni, and periodically bathed in clarified butter and is well incensed. Then the Shiva lingam and yoni are washed with water and new flowers added. Not very sexual. This is a strong abstraction of the paired opposites of human experience, maleness and femaleness. Here a devotee worships the lingam and sees Shiva, in a way, giving his blessings, especially for people wanting children. Procreation, yes. Sexuality, no. Shiva is even known as the vanquisher of Cupid, that is, the subjugator of sexual desire, and his mythic home is in the cold Himalayas. The last Hindu concept I want to mention is both Vedic and Tantric. It's the concept of the accessibility of divinity and the goal of identity with God. This is an idea in the Western world too, in many mystical writings, but not as strong as in Hinduism. God is accessible for us in many specific ways. The ways are individual or in collective worship in temples, prayers, pilgrimage to holy sites, through meditation and breathing techniques, and for many through flashes of grace and love, and through physical or hatha yoga, most known today. Yoga means yoke, as in the yoke of an ox, but in the sense of harnessing or concentrating the mind in meditation with physical techniques. These are the classical 6 systems of yoga, leading to Om. Accessibility to God through the yogas of sannyasa or asceticism, of raja, the royal way, of bhakti or devotion, of jnana or knowledge, of dhyana or meditation, and of karma, action in the world, work. The dhyana yogin uses simple meditation to quiet the mind and gain self-knowledge, separating illusion from reality to help attain the ultimate goal of liberation. The jnana yogin uses just the mind to access God, to find a mental knowledge of the Absolute, union due to pure knowledge. Jnana consists of properly understanding the activity of the body and the knower of the body, which is the soul. The bhakti yogin fosters loving devotion to access God. Bhakti usually involves devotional chants and mantras, often dancing in ecstatic joy. The Raja Yogin uses the mind and meditation to further an acquaintance with reality and to finally achieve liberation. It's called the Royal Way. Or yoga for some can mean praying sincerely to God with offerings. And there are many other kinds of specific yogas too, but all focus on some kind of access to the divine. As Sri Aurobindo said, he is the greatest yogi who not only reaches Brahman by the way of jnana, not only soars to him on the wings of bhakti, but becomes he, through God-devoted karma, who gives himself up utterly for his family and friends, for his country, for all humanity, for the world, yes, and when he can, the solar system and systems upon systems, for the whole universe. That is Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga. In the Tantric tradition, the accessibility of divinity is most traditional by using form patterns, yantras, inscribed geometrical patterns. Meant to stand for God or different aspects of God or divine energies, they often symbolize a personal deity or ways of being for Tantric Hindus. A yantra is a diagrammatic presentation of divinity, as mantra is its sound expression. As one scholar has written, it is the body of divinity. It is said that yantras are crystallized forms of mantras. So mantra, the sound, and the name, and yantra, the form, are essential to tantric practice. So we go to the esoteric Sri Yantra. Popular Hinduism, however, has taken the Sri Yantra into its own realm with many images, here even with Shakti sitting on it, and Shakta, or Shiva, in front of it, with his hand held up in blessing. And here Sri Yantra is surrounded by Sri Shakti, Sri Lakshmi, and Sri Saraswati. The word Sri, by the way, is an adjective prefix, implying not only potentiality, but also auspiciousness, propitious, favorable, even felicitous and blissful. Sri Lakshmi here is above in the form of Gajalakshmi, a wife of Vishnu, not Shiva. So Sri Yantra has been incorporated into mainstream religious Hindu traditions in many variations. Here with little gods and goddesses not just symbolized, but even pictured in each special space. Finally, Sri Yantra in 3 dimensions. The Shakti of Vishnu here has Sri Yantra in 3 dimensions at her feet. It implies Mount Meru in this case, the mythic mountain as the center of the world. Without the goddess imagery, Mount Meru has 3 squares, the very lowest, 3 circles up next, the 2 levels of lotus petals, and 4 levels of triangles on up, with Bindu as the point up on top. Here's a very abstracted way, interesting it is, of drawing it out as multi-leveled. 9 levels, 9 chakras, it is said. A large architectural model of the Sri Yantra within a temple setting in South India, covered over here by thatch. Our nervous system, modern neuroscience tells us, is designed to see images in 3D. Here's a modern stone sculpture in a temple in the United States, Sri Yantra as Mount Meru. The floor plans of many Hindu temples follow the square design or triangles or of various yantras. They are traditionally designed using sacred geometries, just as religious structures are in many parts of the world. The oldest ones still remaining are in South India. The traditional Hindu concept includes 7 chakras of the body, the 7 energy centers. But Sri Yantra or Sri Chakra has 9 chakras altogether, and more symbolic. Often, chakra and yantra are used interchangeably when referring to these meditation symbols. The Tantras state that any aspect of God can be worshipped using the Sri Yantra. It is an arena for the play of thoughts, feelings, and forces both inside and out us, for both play and resolving conflicts. It is meant to activate our energies, stimulate reflection, harmonize emotions, and coordinate our inner and outer strength. Through name and form, one can sense the nameless and formless. That is, one can achieve a sense of identity with God, the goal. There could be several levels of imagery here. Conscious awareness is like the center point of a mandala or a yantra. But mandalas are two-dimensional aesthetic forms based on a center and usually a circular outer shape. Not tantric or necessarily symbolic, mandalas are traditionally used for meditation or inspiration by anyone. Our whole being is more like a symbolic entire yantra, and there is much that is not seen, much that is latent, much that is potential. Our heart is like the center, or our thoughts and mind are like the center, but our full being is like the yantra. And my ego, my personness, is like the center too, but my physical, psycho-social world is the whole yantra, our whole reality. Part 3, the third DVD, will deal with a working meditation practice, basically. We'll start, in this case, from the ground plane, the outer part, go through symbolic walls and gates. The periphery is our security in a way. Circular belts, 3 of them to hold us, and then the lotuses, 16 fulfilling aspects and energies, 8 inner agitators and stressors, very important, and then the triangles, 14 inner pushers but promisers, 10 inner goals to achieve, the inner protectors, 10 also, and 8 healing energies through mantric sound, mantras, and the center triangle, chakra, our surprise gift giver to ourselves, and we'll end up with the center point, love, bliss, really the divine. And finally, Symbol of the Infinite by Sri Aurobindo, a poem.